Hello everyone, this is part 3 of What If Naruto Was Neglected and Was Trained by Shisui, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist. To see more, comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Time skip 4 years. I wanna die, Naruto thought to himself as he rested his hands on his drooping head. Finally, after 5 years, he will finally leave this hell known as the academy. It wasn't just how boring it was how extremely boring it was. Sure, it made sense if a civilian would take these classes, or a newly born child of low-tier clans. They were barely teaching actual shinobi techniques or jutsu. Only the dubbed Academy 3 jutsu that every child with a decent understanding of chakra could complete within their second year. Even the sparring was just a higher level of kids basically play fighting. They taught each kid the exact same taijutsu stance, a stance so bad that if you stepped 1 foot outside the village you would most likely die within minutes. And to throw oil onto an already burning fire, the acceptable passing grade for shuriken and kunai throwing was a 4/10. A 4. That's basically telling the students, now don't worry kids, if you can barely hit a stationary opponent you surely won't hit one moving. Naruto visibly scoffed at his thoughts. Just the mere idea of the damned academy brought back awful memories. In the beginning, it was hard just being in his siblings' shadow, since almost every kid and teacher praised them for basically breathing. Even later on he was getting overlooked for the more smarter kids in the class, like Sakura Haruno and Sasuke Uchiha. And ever since Natsu and Narumi graduated from the academy at the age of 8, a whopping 3 years earlier than normal, his siblings were labeled prodigies of their generation. While Naruto somehow got the title of dope, since he had no special power of a Beiyu like Natsu and Narumi, or even special training. And since the graduation, if possible his parents managed to pull even further away from Naruto, spending most of their time and effort accelerating the training of the two Namikaze prodigies. While he didn't spend much time at his house anymore, he usually spent the night at Shikamaru's house since they became fast friends after the talk on the cliff. He wasn't sure just how far exactly Natsu and Narumi were compared to him. While he knew he had gotten stronger, Naruto just didn't have the right training or a sensei to even teach him anymore. And it proved rather difficult to grow when it seemed like no one wanted him to. But he now had his trump card, the last gift that Shisui Nisan had given him. The Sharingan. He first discovered that he had the Sharingan after he saw his 2 siblings wearing the village headband, finding out that they did in fact graduate early. It explained why he still had his left eye and only adorned a scar over his socket. Sure, Naruto wasn't 100% sure on exactly what happened that day, but he was certain he had lost his eye. And he technically did lose his eye. After he realized he had the Uchiha clan dojutsu, he quickly rushed out of the house and to his signature training ground. While he really didn't know how to work the Sharingan, it felt like it was getting simpler and simpler as the days went by. Naruto groaned. He was slightly disappointed in his progress in actually using the Sharingan. He wasn't a master by any means. He would say he was about an average Uchiha genin when it comes to using it, but the feat was impressive for a non-Uchiha. He did add a lot more genjutsu to his arsenal since he got the dojutsu, since the element of surprise would benefit him greatly, catching his opponent completely off guard. They would automatically be drawn to his eyes and bam, caught under a genjutsu without even realizing. That's part of the reason why no one knew that he had the Sharingan. He wanted to keep the element of surprise until he couldn't hide it anymore. Also, it wouldn't look too good if someone suddenly popped up having a Sharingan after the Uchiha massacre, especially a non-Uchiha. And even after getting close with Shikamaru, he still debated whether or not to tell the Nara genius. And he didn't tell his family for, well, obvious reasons, but the worst was keeping this a secret from Sasuke. While he and Sasuke weren't really best friends, they did hang out from time to time. Strangely enough, it was Sasuke that came up to him first. Flashback. 2 weeks have passed since the horrible Uchiha massacre, and since Naruto realized he now had a Sharingan implanted into his left eye. Naruto wanted to smile at that, the pain was still fresh. But the mere thought of Shisui giving him the most powerful dojutsu did bring a smile to his face. Naruto smiled a sad smile, looking at his reflection in the lake. He was sitting on a pier with his feet dangling over the edge. His Sharingan eye was active, showing his 3 tomo as he stared at his reflection. Naruto let his thoughts drift off, letting the full moon shine down over the black abyss, illuminating the lake, giving a peaceful personality to the lake. While it was already past 11 at night, he knew his parents wouldn't be waiting up for him. That thought made Naruto frown. After his talk with his father in the hospital, it seemed that he wanted to finally reconnect as a family. Well, that was certainly the feeling that Naruto got anyway. While Minato did seem worried about Naruto's health when he was in the hospital. As soon as he got home, everything went right back to normal, if so even got worse. Since Natsu and Narumi graduated early, more of his mother's attention got put into their training. His father was a little less involved since his duties as Hokage have been taking up most of his time since the massacre. Suddenly a loud creaking sound broke Naruto out of his thoughts. After frantically deactivating his dojutsu, he turned his head to see someone he wasn't expecting. It was Uchiha Sasuke, the lone survivor of the Uchiha clan. Naruto stayed silent as the black-haired boy walked over to him slowly. After a few more steps he finally came to the blonde, his onyx eyes looking at Naruto's sapphire as he took a seat. Naruto looked away from Sasuke, the boy slightly awkward since he had never talked to the Uchiha before. Several minutes went by as they stayed silent, letting the warm breeze caress their bodies. The air was soothing and it slightly helped Naruto calm his nerves. In the hospital, you mentioned something about Shisui-san. Naruto blinked in sudden surprise at being addressed. The blonde looked over at Sasuke to see onyx eyes almost glaring at him. Naruto pursed his lips. The sudden intensity Sasuke was sending his way was quite intimidating. Sasuke continued, when you woke up, you said you wanted to stay with. Did you know him? Naruto slowly nodded his head. He didn't know anyone else was in that room, thought just himself and the nurses. A small smile played on his lips. Shisui-san was the one who taught me everything I know. He basically raised me for almost 2 years. Sasuke raised a lone eyebrow at Naruto's words. Raised him. Coming from a son of a Hokage, it made almost 0 sense. Sasuke questioned the blonde about what he meant. The answer he received stunned Sasuke. My partners don't really include me in the family. Everything usually revolves around Natsu and Narumi. Sasuke simply stared at Naruto in complete shock. The Uchiha finally looked away, looking back at his own reflection in the crystal clear lake. His eyes wandered over to the reflection of the boy sitting next to him. Noticing the large vertical scar over his left eye, making Sasuke feel something twinge within him. You know, it was my brother that killed the entire clan. The blonde snapped his head over to Sasuke in disbelief. Naruto's eyes softened. While he didn't know much about the massacre, only that Shisui didn't actually die in the midst of it all. All he knew was that Itachi is the one that committed the genocide. He had no idea Sasuke was related to him. I came to you because Shisui-san was Itachi's best friend. They did everything together. Naruto nodded. He did remember hearing Shisui bring up Itachi on more than one occasion. He pursued his lips yet again. He was most likely the only one to know that the Uchiha were planning a coup d'etat, thanks to Shisui's letters. The thought to tell Sasuke right now quickly passed through his head. But it was kept a secret for a reason, and he would honor that secrecy of his sensei. I hate him. I hate him so much. I want to revenge my clan and kill that bastard for what he did. That's not a good way to think about it. Sasuke glared over at Naruto, his head snapping over to him as he let out a snarl. His fists clenched so tight blood started to leak from his palms. And what do you know? You only lost one person that day. I lost everyone that ever mattered to me. Naruto recoiled in slight surprise, but he managed to hold his ground and shake his head. Shisui-san once told me that it's okay to hate people, but you should never let that blind you from seeing what really matters, he said, making Sasuke falter slightly. The raven-haired child found it harder to maintain its glare. And what matters is that you had that special time with your family, a loving brother that is still out there somewhere, even if you hate him. I mean, you're still here, right? He said, making Sasuke go wide-eyed. The glare left the Uchiha's face as he processed every word Naruto sent his way. He never thought of it like that. Naruto looked over at him and sent a sad smile his way, the pain shining off his two blue eyes. I never got that special time with my family that I've always wanted. And my brother isn't out there anymore. Flashback end. Ever since then the Namikas and Uchiha were not best friends. They did sometimes hang out together with Shikamaru, since Sasuke had nowhere to go and Naruto was seemingly not wanted. They all got along pretty well since all of them were reserved in their own right. Naruto paused at his thoughts. Sometimes it was like they were actually completely alone, since neither Shikamaru or Sasuke were much of talkers. Naruto looked around his empty classroom. Most of the chairs were already long forgotten. There were only about 4 students counting himself as he waited to get called up. All he had to do was the basic Academy 3 jutsu. They already passed both the throwing portion and the written test last night. So the blonde waited, and waited for 1 hour to get called. He mentally sighed. Even in test form he was almost at the very bottom. Next up, Namika's Naruto. Naruto silently cheered as he jumped over his desk and down to the front of the room. The rest of the kids that were waiting to be called rolled their eyes. Most of the class didn't really care for the dope of the academy. His grades were just average and even below most of the clan heirs. So seeing Naruto attempt to show off, in their eyes anyway, left a bitter taste in their mouth. Naruto ignored the looks sent his way and entered the room where the academy instructors were holding the exam. Once he walked through the large door he was met with his teachers for the past 5 years. Iruka Umino and Mizuki Suzo. Mizuki was just like everyone else. He showered Natsu and Narumi with unneeded praise and kept him in the dust to be forgotten. Iruka was much better in the aspect of actually teaching all kids no matter who they were. While Naruto was still greatly overshadowed, Iruka was the only one that gave him a chance to actually prove himself as a capable shinobi. And while his results were minuscule compared to his siblings, he still tried nonetheless. Okay, Naruto, you know the drill. Let's see what you can do. Naruto wanted to scowl at what Iruka said. He's pretty sure Natsu and Narumi didn't have to go through all the miscellaneous shit that he had to do, like write a 4-page report on the importance of chakra. Without performing any hand seals, a clone of himself came to life right next to him. Within a few seconds the clone of Naruto then was engulfed in smoke, turning into a perfect copy of Iruka, down to the last detail. The real Naruto went to smack the clone on the head. Before his hand made contact with the clone, then used a quick substitution with a chair that was in the corner of the room. Soft clapping sounds echoed throughout the tiny room as Mizuki offered a strainful smile. Thankfully Iruka looked real. The clone hanged as Iruka dispersed itself as Iruka offered the boy a village headband. Great job Naruto. Congratulating on finally graduating. Impressive move making your clone do the required jutsu. But try not to show off so much. Naruto couldn't help but roll his eyes at that. He wasn't surprised in the least, but he knew if anybody else performed like that, it would call for bonus points. And on finally graduating, he scoffed, even when they aren't here he is getting compared to his siblings. Naruto held his hand out and shook his head. Iruka raised an eyebrow at the blonde. Naruto then reached into his pouch on his leg and unclipped the hatch. After rummaging inside for a few moments he pulled out the familiar headband that Shisui had given him all their years ago. The scared headband and the aged green cloth making both Chunin raise an eyebrow. He tied the headband around his forehead, ignoring the looks of confusion sent his way. Oi Naruto, remember to come back in 1 hour for team assignments. Finally stepping outside he felt a weight get lifted off his shoulder. He was free, finally free. It felt so good to finally be done with that hell. After a few seconds outside he saw his best friend with his arms folded leaning on a tree just outside. Naruto offered the Nara a small wave making him push himself off the tree. Or how special waiting for your best friend after graduation. Shikamaru rolled his eyes as he scratched the back of his head, yawning as he did so. Well, Choji already went to see his parents, a pre-celebration with his family. So you're all that's left. Naruto grinned at his friend throwing his arm around Shikamaru's shoulder earning a yelp from the Nara, please we all know you love me. A sudden scoff reached both boys' ears as Sasuke walked over to him, his headband wrapped around his forehead. Naruto looked over to him in surprise. The Uchiha genius graces us with his presence. Did hell finally freeze over? Shikamaru nudged his friend in the ribs making Naruto yelp. Sasuke glared over at Naruto and crossed his arms. Sasuke certainly has changed since the massacre. While at the start he was very cold and dark, swearing revenge on his brother for slaughtering his clan. But after his talk with Naruto on the pier he changed again, and this time in a good way. He would never admit it to anyone, but he held Naruto in very high regards, and respects him more than most people. He owes him that much since Naruto helped him out in a very dark time. Naruto was the only one that left an impression on him after all. Naruto wasn't nearly as gifted as his siblings, and after finding out what Naruto's life truly was, it made his respect for the blonde grow. Again, not like he would ever admit it. Whatever, Barker. And I see you graduated, surprised you managed to make it through. Naruto narrowed his eyes at Sasuke's smirk. Shikamaru sighed next to them. He could already hear the blonde's response in his head. TCH. Please, even second years could pass that test. At least most people scored higher than a 89 on the written test. And there it is. Shikamaru groaned to himself as he heard Sasuke rebuttal back full force. This year in the academy, Sasuke was the only clan heir to score below a 90% on the written portion on the graduation test. And Naruto was never one to pass up a chance to mess with Sasuke. Everyone knew how angry Sasuke got wherever someone mentioned it. Most people were too intimidated to say anything to the Uchiha genius, everyone but Naruto. No matter the reason, no matter the conversation. The blonde always managed to find a way to slip it into day-to-day conversation. Naruto suddenly stopped mid-sentence as the trio looked over to the streets. Most of the gradation class turned over as screeches and yells echoed into the summer air. Naruto frowned as one of the last people he wanted to see came walking over to him. Sasuke flanked his right while Shikamaru had his left, both having matching grimaces. They both know exactly how the Namikaze family treated their friend. To say they were disgusted was a true understatement. It made them nauseous down to their very core, to think that some people so prestigious would literally abandon a child. Hey Ototo, how did the graduation go? I see you managed to pass. The feminine voice belonged to none other than Narumi Namikaze, the only daughter. Her headband secretly tied around her forehead. But the most distinguishing feature was not her headband, it was the dark chunin vest she sported over her black t-shirt. Narumi offered her brother a smile, moving her eyes over the three newly made genin. The past 2 years have been very difficult for Narumi. It wasn't until she noticed that Naruto hasn't been home in literally months that something has been terribly wrong with her brother. And slowly but surely everything came crashing down on her like a pile of bricks. Remembering exactly how their parents left Naruto, and how she never seemed to care. In truth, she felt like shit every time she saw the boy. It was a painful reminder of her failure as an older sister. She tried asking her parents about why they won't train or even acknowledge Naruto's presence. Not once has she gotten a real answer. So each time she brushed it off, still believing they have a real reason. Then there was their brother Natsu. He followed the example of his parents, and while he didn't ignore the blonde completely, he wouldn't treat him like a real brother either. And that was her biggest problem with both her brothers. She's had countless arguments with Natsu on trying to incorporate Naruto back into their lives. But each time it always failed, with either Naruto refusing to do anything with them, or Natsu getting fed up with Naruto's stubbornness. Naruto grunted at his sister, his eyes glancing everywhere else besides her. Yes, I did. Is there a reason you are here, Narumi? The red-headed girl quickly nodded her head as she forced back a frown. She took a few moments to respond. Well, I wanted to see how my little brother was before I left for my mission, she said, trying her best to sound as real as possible. Honestly, she did forget all about Naruto's graduation today. Luckily she was leaving from the west gate, or she wouldn't have seen the giant sign on the academy saying, graduation. Besides, Narumi continued, I wanted to see how you were doing. Naruto shrugged his shoulders, turning on his heel. He scoffed, fine as I'll ever be, he spoke, effectively ending the conversation. Narumi frowned at Naruto's back. She wasn't surprised by his answer. But she was sorely disappointed. She gave a heavy sigh and soon left the academy grounds. She had a mission to get to after all. Shikamaru elbowed Naruto in the side softly, making the blonde turn to him. The Nara raised an eyebrow. You good man. Naruto once again shrugged his shoulders, the sudden anger already gone from his body. Sasuke snorted at his side. Hands rested in his pockets as they entered the academy classroom once more. Almost every seat was taken apart from a row of 3 in the front. Sounds of laughter echoed through the halls as kids talked loudly about finally graduating. But sadly their presence did not get ignored. A few heads turned over to them. Especially a head of pink and blonde. Naruto and Shikamaru gave a groan as they covered their ears. Sasuke-kun. Sasuke flinched at his name as 2 almost identical rockets came blasting off towards him. Naruto and Shikamaru took a few steps backwards, leaving Sasuke to his misery. The Uchiha sent him a pleading look, one of the only emotions he allowed his friends to see across his face. The pink rocket snuggled into Sasuke's right shoulder, emitting a moan of content from her lips. While the blonde was on his back leaning on his neck. Sasuke-kun, I missed you so much. Did you miss me? Before he even had a chance to respond, the blonde on his back scowled. Like hell he would miss your forehead. We all know who he truly misses here. Oh yeah, Ino pig. I bet he doesn't even know your name. You just said my name, Barker. Well, whatever, Ino pig. Naruto shot an amused glance over at Sasuke. That would be Sakura Haruno and Ino Yamanaka. The 2 leaders of the Uchiha fan club, while most girls in the class praised the Uchiha. Sakura and Ino were the only 2 that actually vocalized it. Every single day. Sure, it was funny for a few days, seeing how bad they had it for Sasuke, and it was always fun to see Sasuke's misfortune. But now it turned to a basic obsession for Sasuke, and while the Uchiha was still miserable, no, it still made Naruto laugh. Thankfully, and luckily for Sasuke, the scarred Chunin from earlier entered the classroom. He saw the commotion in the center of the room and his eyebrow twitched. He was so happy this year was over. Everyone shut up and pay attention. Iruka smiled when now every student took their seats. He cleared his throat before he started talking. Okay, I want to say once again, congrats on graduating. Cheers broke out in the classroom. And this year the team assignments are a little different, he said, making the students raise their eyebrows in confusion. Iruka walked around and turned the folder in his arms around, showing it to the class. Usually we assign new genin to their Junin senseis within the week. But this year's graduating class showed exponential growth and promised that Hokage-sama and I have decided that today is the day where we assign the teams. Teams 1 to 6 are fodder, we will skip them. Now Team 7 will be Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and Ken Gasai. Sensei will be Kakashi Hatake. Sasuke's head fell forward and smacked his desk while Sakura jumped up and down in happiness. Naruto shot Sasuke a look of pity before Iruka continued. Team 8 will be Kiba Inuzuka, Shino Aburame, and Hinata Hyuga. Sensei will be Kurenai Yuhi. All the clan heirs nodded their heads at their team. The more enthusiastic Kiba gave a happy yell. Naruto blinked his eyes, the familiar name sparking something within him. He gave a hidden smile. Looks like she passed the Junin exams. Sucks she couldn't have been my sensei. Team 9 is still in circulation from last year. So Team 10 will have Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akamaiki, and Ino Yamanaka. Sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi. Ino groaned loudly, complaining why Kami seemed to hate her. Choji just smiled while Shikamaru was asleep. Naruto raised his eyebrow in confusion. His eyes scanning the classroom as he started to count the students. 25, 26, 27. What the hell, I'm the 28th graduate. He thought to himself with a frown. The class was uneven and every kid has now been put into a squad except him. He was the only one left. Sasuke seemed to notice as well and looked at Naruto with the same amount of confusion. Iruka continued, his eyes looking down at his file in shock. Well, this is new. Team 11 will consist of Naruto Namikaze, Sai, and Shizuka. Sensei will be Anko Mitarashi. The class went silent, no one even knew who those last 2 kids are. Iruka saw his students' confusion and was right there with them. He read off the file. Sai was trained under Anbu tutelage with the village elder Danzo's supervision. Shizuka is a transfer student from Nadeshiko village. She moved here last week, so I hope you will make them both feel welcomed. After a few moments of letting it all sink in, Iruka explained where they would meet their instructors. Team 7, Kakashi will be up on the roof. Team 8, Kurenai will be at training ground 21. Team 10, Asuma will be at training ground 99. Team 11, Anko will be at training ground 4. Time skip, after class. Naruto stayed silent as he made his way to training ground 4. It was the closest training ground to the academy and the walk was only about 10 minutes. On his way his thoughts drifted to his supposed two teammates. The other male on his team was a boy named Sai, no surname. He was trained by a man named Danzo and was finally able to graduate. Naruto had no idea what to think of Sai. He hadn't met the boy yet but he was a little skeptical. He was with Anbu all this time, his strength would probably be way more advanced than a regular genin. And the lone female, Shizuka, also had no surname. Now she was a total enigma. He's never heard of Nadeshiko village before, and the info he had of her was she was already a genin before transferring over. So her strength would not be something to laugh about either. So that raised the question, was he as strong as his two mystery teammates? He gave a sigh as he finally entered the training ground, suddenly feeling inferior. As he was walking up he saw two kids almost his exact age. His brain quickly realizing who they were as he got closer to them. The boy was none other than Sai. He had long black hair with even blacker eyes. His hair was parted in the middle showing off his Konoha headband. He was wearing a gray shirt that ended right under his chest, allowing his pale midriff to be exposed. He had on black pants with his tan ninja pouch on the leg. He had a large scroll on his back and he was drawing something on a lone piece of paper. His eyes moved over to the lone girl. She also had jet black hair, her bangs threatening to fall into her emerald eyes. Her hair covering her headband from sight. She was wearing a tight blue shirt, with a black cape style going down to her waist showing off her developing cleavage. She had on tight black pants on with matching combat boots. Shizuka was the first to notice Naruto's entrance. Her green eyes sized the blonde up. He was wearing a regular black t-shirt with a zipped-up red hoodie. He had loose shinobi pants that ended at his ankles. His green sandals matching the cloth on his headband perfectly. His unruly blonde locks falling into his eyes, only being kept up by his headband. She narrowed her eyes at Naruto, something seemed off about the blonde. And she didn't know a lot of new graduates to already have a scar. Shizuka. Naruto sweat dropped, well she didn't sound much like a talker. Sai finally looked up, his onyx eyes dead of any emotion, but a small smile formed on his lips. Hello, I'm Sai, he said as he gave a formal bow. Naruto, feeling awkward, just smiled their way, his hand coming up to scratch the back of his head. Well, I'm Naruto Uzumaki. That was another recent development that has occurred in the blonde's life. It's been a long time since Naruto felt like an actual Namikaze. Every time someone would associate him with that family, he would always feel like a disappointment or unwanted child. So that's why he came to call himself Uzumaki. It was a small change, but it made himself feel better. An awkward silence fell over the new genin, no one really knowing how to start a conversation. Naruto rubbed his neck as his eyes moved over his two new teammates. Shizuka noticed his lingering gaze and glared at Naruto. And what are you looking at, pretty boy? Naruto blinked in confusion before looking away from her, trying his best to hide the soft blush that now resided on his cheeks. Nothing, just looking at my new team. Shizuka scoffed, crossing her arms over her chest. Whatever, if I catch you trying to do anything sketchy I'll make sure to kill you where you stand. Naruto scoffed at her, he wasn't one to just stand around and take threats. He had enough of those already. I haven't even done anything. Sai smiled at them both, his eyes turning into upside-down U's. You two would make a cute couple. Both their heads snapped to Sai. Shizuka, seemingly more angry, sent a kunai his way. And what's that supposed to mean, painter? I mean it's pretty obvious what he meant. Shikazu glared over at Naruto, the blonde grinning mischievously. I didn't ask you, Barker. Sai never lost his smile, he set the paper he was drawing on back to the floor. Blondie, try not to get tits angry. She has a temper. Shizuka's face heated up as she threw her arms over her chest. Naruto let a snicker leave his mouth. The raven-headed girl grew angrier, but before she could do anything about it, a loud sizzling sound echoed out as a kunai embedded itself right in the center of all three genin. All three genin widened their eyes at the seal that was hanging from the back. Get back. Naruto tackled Shizuka away as Sai jumped backwards just in time. A loud explosion shook the area while Naruto fell to the ground with Shizuka on top of him. Sai landed next to them, his large scroll was now on the floor with his pen in his right hand. Both Naruto and Shizuka got to their feet and stood next to Sai. Naruto held a kunai in his hand while Shizuka was weaponless. What the hell was that? Naruto spoke, his eyes traveling a mile a minute around the clearing. Trying to locate any sign of danger, Shizuka responded. That was most likely our sensei. It would explain why she wasn't at the training ground on time. Sai nodded his head. After a few brush strokes, two small birds made of ink raised themselves from his scroll and took into the forest. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the ability, checking it off of ninja abilities he didn't know existed. My birds are looking around right now. No one spotted, Sai said as he stayed in his position. The remaining students circled Sai watching the perimeter. Naruto continued for Sai, all other genin tests all revolved around teamwork. I don't imagine this being any different, he said, both his teammates nodding with him. Silently thanking his late sensei for sharing that info with him. Suddenly Sai widened his eyes. Both teammates witnessed this, and before they could speak a word, a large-sized snake came raining down at them. Its mouth opened, showing its large fangs as he attempted to devour Sai whole. Naruto suddenly appeared in front of Sai. His hands formed quick hand seals. Water style, water shield jutsu. Naruto spun his arms rapidly as a large shield made of pure water formed from his hands. It was large enough to just cover his head as the snake bit down. The fangs connected with the water as it splashed upwards, obscuring the vision of both Naruto and the snake. Suddenly he felt a foot jump on his back and he looked up to see Shizuka propelling herself upwards. She spun in the air as what looked like hundreds of kunai rained down at the snake. Ninja art, kunai volley. One by one each kunai stuck themselves into the snake's body. Pained hissing escaped the snake's mouth as it released his jaw from Naruto's water jutsu. The blonde jumped backwards, letting the jutsu break as Sai jumped to the side scroll in hand. Sadly they didn't communicate well enough as they collided. Naruto smacked Sai in the mouth as they tumbled and rolled on the ground. Shizuka landed next to the groaning boys as she glared down at them. Naruto got to his feet, rubbing his head. Way to mess that up. Shizuka hissed as Sai smiled over at her. He got to his feet as he gave a few more strokes on the scroll. It's okay tits, it was an accident. Stop calling me that. Ninja art, bear attack. A huge bear made of pure ink materialized out of the scroll. It easily towered over the three genin as it raced off to the snake. Another sound of a kunai soared through the air right at Naruto. The blonde, seeing it coming, reflected it with his own. Shizuka moved fast as she caught the deflected kunai at the hilt as a purple-headed girl crashed down to the clearing. She held a huge white sign in her hands while confetti exploded from the mouths of two snakes that were around her legs. Welcome the amazing and sexy Anko Mitarashi. All three genin stared dumbfounded. This was their sensei. No one said a word while Anko just smiled happily at them. Sure, she was late. It wasn't her fault. She forgot about her genin team and then proceeded to make the sign and convince the snakes to actually spit confetti. So not her fault. Why, you're our sensei. Shizuka gasped out as her eyes widened in pure astonishment. The sexy Junin swayed her purple hair to the side and offered her a wink. Sai looked over at Naruto and pointed his thumb over at Anko. It seems Tits Sensei deserves the name more. Naruto's spine stiffened as he gave a sideways glance over to the now enraged Shizuka and confused Anko. Shizuka smacked Sai on the head, really hard, making the black-haired boy fall flat on his face. And what's supposed to mean? She quickly snapped her head to Naruto, aiming the kunai at his throat. And I swear if you anything I will lodge this kunai right in your jugular. Oh, it seems we have a hothead on this team. But if anything is getting lodged into something, I'll be doing it. Anko's voice spoke clearly, echoing in the clearing as she appeared right behind Shizuka, the feeling of cold steel on the young girl's neck as time seemed to freeze. Shizuka still had her grip on Sai while Naruto was still looking down the barrel of a kunai. Anko's voice was sickeningly sweet, the huge smile forever glued to her face. Shizuka cringed at her sensei. Now don't be afraid of little ol' me. I won't hurt ya, she said as she slowly dragged the kunai over her neck softly. Since I can't actually kill you, you know, laws and all. I would only torture you slowly for threatening a fellow Konoha shinobi. Just imagine the soft kunai. Her voice passed her lips smoothly, making Shizuka sick to her stomach. Anko pushed the kunai deeper into her skin, drawing a small amount of blood. Pressing a little deeper. Suddenly Shizuka's body erupted into gold confetti. Anko looked on in shock as she jumped backwards, letting the confetti hit the ground. She looked behind her as she saw the huge snake she sent after the genin was now dead. That bear had ripped it to shreds, while Naruto and the remaining of his team were standing next to the ink bear. Shizuka looked over at Naruto in shock while Sai remained impassive. Naruto grinned at his sensei's expression, as a sudden hand grabbed the back of Anko's body, pressing a kunai to her throat. The purple-haired kunoiki's eyes glanced to her side to see an exact copy of Naruto behind her. Genjutsu, pretty effective, isn't it? Anko returned the grin. When did you cast it? Naruto explained, the moment you put the kunai to Shizuka's throat. Okay, that was partly the truth, while Anko was distracted on Shizuka and while Sai was facing the ground. He had time to hide his face and activate his Sharingan. He was able to catch Anko's eyes for a split second before she was put under one of his genjutsu. It was a risky move on Naruto's part. His teammates didn't see him weave any hand seals, if they even saw anything to begin with, but he did enjoy the look of pure disbelief on Shizuka's face as he walked over to her and just pushed Anko's arms away. While Sai looked shocked for a moment, Naruto really couldn't tell since it went away as soon as it saw it. Anko let out loud booming laughter as she grinned at the blonde behind her. Her eyes glowing with playfulness, having fun pressing yourself into my blondie. The clone of Naruto turned a new shade of red as Anko teased him. Before he could move, Anko quickly dispelled the clone. As it erupted into water soaking the back of her brown trench coat. She took a few steps closer to the new genin and smirked. Her tongue coming out to lick her lips hungrily. I will say you three surprised me greatly. Not only were you able to kill that snake, she said, pointing her thumb over at the dead snake. You managed to surprise a Junin-level ninja, and you did it with amazing teamwork with only knowing each other for not even an hour. I'll say that's worthy of passing. Naruto physically beamed at the praise, trying his best to rid the giant blush on his face. Shizuka was a lot more composed since she was already a genin from her hometown. But she couldn't stop the small grin from forming. Sai remained impassive, his eyes stayed blank, but a faintest smile was noticeable. It was subtle but still there. Now we are officially Team 11. Now get ready for fucking hell. Okay. Please report everyone. Minato said happily as he clapped his hands in joy. Out of all jobs that Minato absolutely hated while he was Hokage, he was always excited for the graduation of academy students. Every year he looks forward to it, and this year was no exception. Looking out in front of him were 9 of the strongest Junin that Konoha had to offer. And the test results that Iruka had given him told him that there was a very promising bunch of kids this year. He couldn't contain his excitement and decided to give the kids Junin senseis the day off. He smiled wide as he gestured to his only student in the room. Kakashi-kun, please report. Kakashi sweet dropped at the Hokage's attitude. Putting down his infamous Ichi Paradise book, he scratched his cheek with a sigh. Team 7 consisting of Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and Ken Gasai, pass. The whole room was in shock at hearing him actually pass a squad. Even Minato was slightly at a loss for words. Really? What made you pass them and not any other of your teams? A man named Asuma Sarutobi said, taking a long drag of his cigarette, making the woman next to him elbow him slightly in the ribs. Minato nodded. I would also love to hear this, Kakashi-kun. The silver-haired man shrugged his shoulders. Well, at first they were just like every other team I had gotten before. Attacking me all separately and with no plan. The Haruno girl wouldn't stop following the Uchiha kid around like a lost puppy dog. It was really hard to watch. That doesn't explain why you passed them, Kakashi. Kakashi turned his head and gave his signature eye smile to Kurenai Yuhi, waving his hand in the air. I'm getting there, Kurenai. It wasn't until the last 10 minutes of the test that they coordinated an attack against me all at once. Of course they didn't push me very hard at all. But it was a valiant effort. But finally showing signs of teamwork, I decided to pass them. Minato smiled at his explanation. Happy to hear that Kakashi finally passes one of his teams. His eyes shifted over to the person next in line, Kurenai-san. Please report. She nodded, looking back up to her Hokage. Meeting his eyes and she swallowed a grunt. Team 8 Consisate of Kiba Inuzuka, Shino Aburame, and Hinata Hyuga have passed Hokage-sama. she said, making him nod his head. They all worked well together from the moment the test started. It was a good improvement to Hinata-chan as well. Kiba-kun seemed to help her break out of her shell a bit. That's wonderful, I was worried that her shyness would interfere with her abilities, he said, genuinely happy to hear about the girl's improvement. Kurenai nodded before stepping back into place. Okay Asuma Sarutobi, how was Team 10? The big burly man smiled, as you would expect Hokage-sama. Shikamaru Nara, Ino Yamanaka, and Choji Akamite performed perfectly. Minato grinned as expected from the next generation of the Ino Shikacho trio. Last but not least Minato turned his attention to the last shinobi in the lineup. He felt his enthusiasm start to die down a little as he dreaded what was coming next. Anko Mitarashi, report on Team 11 please. Anko snapped to attention at being addressed so suddenly. She was slightly embarrassed since she was too preoccupied looking at all the pictures that hung on the walls of the Hokage's office. She never knew all the past Hokages were hanging on the wall. She grinned happily as she saluted her leader playfully. Team 11 consisting of Shizuka, Sai, and Naruto Namika's passed with flying colors Hokage-sama. She said, not noticing the sigh of relief that Minato breathed out. He was nervous to hear that his youngest wouldn't have graduated, but if he didn't would it really be his fault? Miento shook his thoughts away, I see. That's wonderful then. He said, making Anko nod. Yes Hokage-sama, they all worked surprisingly well together despite only knowing each other for only about 10 minuets prior to the test. She said, shocking Minato. She continued, they managed to kill one of my snake summons and Naruto and Shizuka were pretty proficient with their ninjutsu and that Sai Kid was a front runner for ninjutsu. But Naruto, man did he surprise me. She said getting everyone present to look at her in question. Minato felt his hands clam up, afraid to ask. How Sir Anko? Asuma asked, he was pretty intrigued himself. He had somehow forgotten that Hokage-sama had a third child. Anko turned towards the Sarutobi. Well I was threatening the Shizuka girl, you know kunai to the neck trying to scare her. Everyone pleasantly rolled their eyes, typical Anko. When she just exploded into a ball of confetti, and before I even noticed that blonde Gaki caught me in a genjutsu with a kunai to my neck. The room fell silent, shocked to hear the report on the third Namika's child. Kurenai was probably the least shocked at hearing that the blonde boy she hadn't seen in a very long time was on Anko's team. She smiled to herself, happy to hear that he was still pursuing genjutsu. Her mind started to drift thinking about him. She hasn't seen the kid since her promotion to Junin almost 5 years ago. Ah really Anko? How'd he manage to do that? Asuma said, his cigarette having already fallen out of his mouth in shock. Even the usual stoic Kakashi couldn't help but show a hint of surprise. Anko shrugged, I'm still not really sure when he did it. But it had to be quick, he never weaved a single sign. And as far as I know you can't perform a genjutsu without hand signs. Kurenai shook her head. That's not true, you can but it takes an incredible amount of stability and chakra control. Only masters of the art are able to do it. Anko nodded, grinning, then I might have a genjutsu prodigy on my team. Sweet. He wasn't a one-trick pony either, he had a pretty strong water affinity. She said, turning her attention back to Minato, raising an eyebrow in curiosity. Any reason on why he didn't graduate early with his brother and sister Hokage-sama? He definitely is higher than Genin level, she asked, making all eyes turn to Minato. His head started to ache as he panicked at all the expected shinobi eyes on him. He coughed into his fist, anyway thank you Anko-san. Everyone is dismissed. I have some important things I need to look over, he frantically said as one by one the Junin started to leave his office. Unbeknownst to him with the narrowed eyes looking his way as they left the room. Minato put his head in his hands, sweat starting to form on his brow as he looked down at his desk. I don't know what to do. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.